We have this one, also very powerful. Literally in Chi, we say "Funtu from food and chen from food." When you know about odidi and I know of, literally saying that we have these crocodiles Siamese conjoined in the stomach. Even though they have a common stomach, because of the differences of taste of food, they sometimes struggle when they are eating. It talks about the fact that we are diverse as a people, but we should derive strength in the diversity that we find ourselves. So we say unity in diversity, or peaceful coexistence. The thing is that when they eat, the food goes into one stomach to nourish them. Therefore, we should all learn to be together for our common good as a people. It is also vividly exemplified in the chieftaincy system of succession to the throne. When the stool is vacant, you see people struggling, vying to be, considered by the Queen Mother and the Ebusuapeni. They all will struggle. At the end of the day, the moment one is nominated, all the others would rally behind that individual. That is the beauty of the symbol.
Among all Adinkra symbols and their meaning that have been recorded and preserved, the former symbols hold intangible fables, proverbs, folk tales, songs, and phrases. The Adinkra also portray important events, the behavior of flora and fauna, and human behavior.
Traditionally, the Adinkra cloth was very unique and used by royalty, so that's Santi royalty, and then spiritual leaders during ritual ceremonies. So it wasn't open to other ethnic groups like that. But of course, over time, you find that other ethnic groups have also adopted the Adinkra cloth, and this use has gone beyond funerals. Now people wear it to weddings, naming ceremonies, parties, and all kinds of social events. One of the most beautiful things about the Adinkra symbols is the fact that it is deep in terms of the meanings. Most of the Adinkra symbols have interesting proverbial meanings. So if you don't belong to that society, you may not understand the symbol.
Mr. Apia explains some of the common Adinkra symbols.
This one here, literally, the Akukona Tiaba Nkumba. If you want to depict a typical motherhood, the hen is number one example of who a mother is. If you are a parent and you have people under you, if you have to strike or discipline, but don't punish. You discipline to correct, but you don't punish. Just as we say, Akukona Tiaba, Nkumba.
One such symbol is what we call Uwachidie Bakonfo. Right? Uwachidie literally means the ladder of death, or the death ladder. What does it mean? The basic idea behind the ladder of death is that death is inevitable. One day, whether we like it or not, we shall all what? Die. But the beauty of that symbol is that in climbing the ladder, the expectation is that someone is waiting for you at the end of that ladder. So God is waiting for you at the end of that ladder, which means that death itself is not something that we should fear. It has nothing to do with evil. People don't die because they committed any evil thing. But death is a kind of welcoming ceremony. And that is why you find that in African societies, when people die, we celebrate the dead rather than crying and doing all those kinds, because there's an expectation that you are going to meet God somewhere. Right. The other type of a Adinkra symbol is what we call Jinyame, which is very popular. So it means except God or only God. And if you look at the meanings behind it, except God means that it creates the notion that God is dependable, right? Irrespective of the situation you are going through, once you put your trust in God, whatever man does will not lead to anything, and that it is God's plans for your life that will come to what? Pass. Then we have another one which we call the Adinkra Hene. The Adinkra Hene simply means the chief of the Adinkra symbols, or the Adinkra king. And you find that almost all the Adinkra symbols that were formed dependent on the Adinkra king. So that is the basis of all the Adinkra symbols, right? We also have another Adinkra symbol that is called the Akofohene, right? And it simply means it represents the sword of the king, right? So it has to do with valor, bravery, courage, right? So everybody who is brave and courageous relates to this type of symbol. Then we also have the Anansintintan, which is quite exceptional. We all know that Anansi means the spider. In most of our stories, you know that the spider has to do with deceit and being wise and the rest. But you also find that the spider is self-sustaining. It builds its own house from within, right? So the idea of the Anansi Tintan means that we are self-sustaining, and then we are also what? Wise. It also means that even as Africans, we should look within and use the resources that we have to develop our own what? Selves before we look outside. These symbols are not just mere pictures, but you find that these symbols represent our own forms of communication, which we refer to as visual communication. There's always this misconception that it's as if Africans had nothing and that everything we have today was brought to us by the Europeans. But it also tells us that looking at the symbols, it tells us something that our forefathers, our ancestors, were highly intelligent. They did not just get up and then design these symbols. In terms of relevance, you find that the Dinkra symbols are rooted within historical events. They tell us about our history. They tell us about religious understandings, our own religious philosophies. They tell us about African ideas. They tell us about our values, our norms. They relate to human behavior, human attitude. They tell us about animal behavior, even historical events. So clearly, the Dinkra symbol doesn't just stand for a symbol, but it also stands for our own history. And it is something that we cannot throw away. It is part of our heritage. And even in modern times, you find that the symbols are taking on different trends. They've gone beyond the traditional trends, and now they're even adopting new ideas, including technology, new technological developments like the mobile phone. The reality on the ground is that today, Africans seem to have lost their self-identity. We seem to have thrown everything that is so dear to us, our heritage. We've thrown everything away, and we've gone for everything that is foreign. But there's a Zulu proverb that says that a zebra without stripes is not a zebra. So what have we become? We are just imitating foreigners to the extent that we have become nothing. The point I'm making is that if we value our culture and we hold it dear, it is important that we keep our culture, we maintain it, we teach it even at the basic levels. We should be proud of who we are. We should be proud of our African identity. That is what makes us who we are. We cannot become like white people. And so I think that moving beyond, then we shouldn't throw our hands in despair. We can go back, Sankofa Yinchi, right? We can go back and learn from our past and take back the parts of our culture that are good and use it for our future. There's nothing wrong with that.
There are